The warship hung above Earth like a black shadow. It was massive, stretching across the sky with sharp edges and glowing red lines. People below looked up in fear. The ship was not here to talk. It was here to conquer. Inside the warship stood Karzul, the strongest warrior of the Dravic Empire. His armor shone like dark metal fire, and his four glowing eyes scanned the battlefield. The Dravic had crushed hundreds of planets. Every species they met had bent their knees or died. To them, humans were only another weak race waiting to be enslaved. The warship opened its doors. From the sky, a beam of light fell, striking the center of a ruined city. Dust rose. Concrete cracked. The Dravic warrior stepped down, his heavy boots sinking into the broken ground. Humans! Karzul's voice shook the air like thunder. Your time is over. Bow now, or I will burn this world to ash. People screamed. Soldiers raised their weapons, but everyone knew their bullets would not harm him. Tanks had already failed. Jets had fallen from the sky. But then, in the middle of the ruined street, one human stepped forward. He was tall, but not as tall as the alien. He wore no shining armor, only a torn jacket and dirt-stained boots. His hair was messy, his face scarred, yet his eyes were calm. His name was Daniel Hayes. Karzul laughed when he saw him. One man? You dare step forward when your armies have fallen? Do you want to beg for mercy? Daniel did not move. His lips curved into a faint smirk. No, he said. His voice was steady, clear, almost mocking. I just want to see if you're really as tough as you sound. The crowd gasped. Some thought the human had lost his mind. Others stared in silent hope. Karzul's laugh shook the ground. You are a fool. Do you think your tiny frame can face me? I have crushed warriors bigger, stronger, and faster than you. Daniel tilted his head, still smirking. Yeah, but none of them were human. The alien's four glowing eyes narrowed. For the first time, he hesitated. There was something in the human's tone, something he had not heard in the countless worlds he had conquered. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was something else. Confidence. Daniel took a slow step forward, dust crunching beneath his boots. He stood tall, his back straight, his shoulders steady. Around them, silence fell. The air seemed heavier, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Karzul roared, lifting his massive weapon, a blade of burning plasma. The light reflected in Daniel's calm eyes. You will die, human! But Daniel did not move back. He did not flinch. His smirk only grew wider. That's the difference between us, he said. You think fear wins wars. We think standing tall does. The alien swung his blade down with the force of an earthquake. Sparks flew. The ground split open. Fire roared across the street. People screamed, certain the human had been torn in two. But when the smoke cleared, Daniel was still standing. The blade had missed by inches. Dust covered his jacket, but his eyes never wavered, and he was still smirking. The crowd erupted in disbelief. The alien's glowing eyes burned with fury. You dare mock me? Daniel shrugged. I'm not mocking you. I'm just showing you something you don't understand yet. The alien lifted his blade again, ready to strike. But deep inside, for the first time in his long history of conquest, Karzul felt something strange crawl into his chest. It was not anger. It was doubt, and the people watching, the broken and frightened humans, felt something else awaken inside them as well. Hope. Karzul's blade rose high, glowed with the power of a star. He swung again, fast as lightning, the ground cracking under the force of his strike. But Daniel moved, not fast enough to dodge like a superhuman, but fast enough to step aside at the very last moment. The blade struck the street, sending chunks of stone flying. Dust filled the air. The crowd screamed. Yet again, Daniel stood untouched. The alien roared. Impossible. You cannot escape me forever, human. Daniel's smirk stayed. Funny, I don't need to escape. I just need to remind you something. Karzul snarled. And what is that? That we don't break as easy as you think. The alien warrior's chest rumbled with rage. His armor glowed hotter. He lunged forward, slashing left, then right, his massive weapon cutting through steel and stone. Every strike shook the ruins like an earthquake. Each swing should have ended the fight. But Daniel kept moving. He ducked, slid, and stepped back just in time. His jacket tore. His cheek bled where a blade of plasma grazed him. Still he stood. Still he smirked. It was not luck. It was not speed. It was something else. Something the alien did not understand. Observation. Daniel's eyes tracked every movement, every twitch in Carzol's armored body. He studied the rhythm, the weight, the pauses between strikes. He was not a soldier. He was not trained in alien war. But he was human, and humans learn fast. The crowd watched in silence. Their fear began to twist into awe. One man, alone, was holding off the strongest warrior of the Dravic Empire. Finally, Daniel moved forward. Instead of dodging, he stepped inside the alien's reach. His fist shot out, punching Carzol in the chest. The sound was like steel striking steel. The human's knuckles split open, blood dripping down. The alien did not fall. He did not even flinch. But the crowd gasped, because for the first time, someone had struck back. Daniel shook his hand, flexing his fingers. He winced, then smirked again. Harder than concrete. Guess I'll need to try again. Carzol's 4 eyes blazed. You dare touch me. You are nothing. A worm beneath my boot. He kicked forward, his armored foot slamming into Daniel's chest. The force threw the human across the street. Daniel crashed through a wall, bricks falling around him. The crowd screamed. Dust swallowed the ruins. For a moment, it seemed over. Carzol lifted his blade high, roaring in victory. This is your champion. Weak, broken. I will burn this world and scatter your ashes to the void. Then, through the smoke, came movement. Daniel stepped out, coughing, blood at the corner of his mouth. His body shook, his jacket torn to shreds. But he was still alive, still standing, and still smirking. You hit harder than a truck, Daniel said, his voice ragged. But I've been hit before. I'm still here, still standing. The alien's victory cry died in his throat. His blade lowered slightly. This human, this fragile creature, refused to fall. Daniel pointed a finger at him. That's your problem. You think strength is just about power. But power means nothing if you can't break someone's spirit. And mine's not breaking. The words cut deeper than any weapon. Around them, soldiers lifted their heads. Civilians rose from behind rubble. Even the wounded stared with wide eyes. Hope spread like fire. Carzol saw it. He felt it. And for the first time in his long life, he realized he was losing something far greater than a duel. He was losing fear. With a roar, the alien charged again, blade burning brighter. Daniel braced himself, his fists tightening, his smirk turning into a grin. He knew he could not match the alien in strength. But strength was not the only thing that won battles. Humans had something else. Something no empire could ever measure. And the ruined street shook as Carzol slammed his blade into the ground again. Fire leapt up, spreading cracks across the stone. The alien's roars echoed like thunder. But Daniel stood there, chest heaving, blood dripping from his mouth. His legs trembled, yet he never bent his knees. He stayed upright, staring at the alien with those calm, defiant eyes. The crowd whispered. Soldiers clutched their weapons tighter. Children peered out from behind broken walls. They had never seen anyone stand against a Dravic like this. You don't learn human, Carzol snarled, pulling his blade free. You are a fragile body waiting to be broken. Why fight? Why suffer? Why stand? Daniel spat blood onto the cracked pavement, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Because every time I stand, someone else remembers they can too. The words struck harder than fists. People stirred. Shoulders straightened. Heads lifted. Carzol noticed. His glowing eyes narrowed. The human stubbornness was dangerous, but his words were worse. They were spreading. The alien stomped forward, towering over Daniel. You think your spirit can save them? I will crush it here before their eyes. He swung again, the blade humming with deadly light. Daniel dodged, rolling behind a wrecked car. The plasma cut through metal like paper, splitting the vehicle in half. Heat, blasted the air. Daniel rose from the other side, coughing, his jacket smoking, still smirking. "You know something, big guy?" he said, voice loud enough for the crowd. "For all that power, you're not very good at hitting me." A ripple of laughter came from the crowd, short and nervous, but real. Carzo froze. Laughter. From humans. At him. His pride burned hotter than his blade. "Silence!" he roared, his voice shaking the ground. But the humans didn't silence. The sound had unlocked something in them. For the first time since the invasion, fear cracked. Daniel tilted his head. "What's wrong?" "Don't like being laughed at." The alien lunged, faster, angrier. Daniel sidestepped, tripping over rubble, but using it to roll back to his feet. He staggered, but stood again. "You're big, you're strong, and you got toys I can't dream of," Daniel said, panting. "But you've got a problem." Carzo snarled. "Speak, worm. You think winning is about fear. But humans, we don't just fight because we're scared of losing. We fight because we believe we can win." The crowd roared, shaky at first, then louder. Soldiers raised their rifles. Civilians clenched their fists. Hope had turned into courage. Carzo swung wildly, his blade cleaving through a building, sending stone raining down. But his movements grew reckless. He was angry now, too angry, and Daniel saw it. Every mistake, every wasted strike, every ounce of pride that blinded the alien. Daniel grinned, blood running down his cheek. "That's it. Keep swinging. Get mad. Makes you sloppy." The alien's roar rattled the air. He lunged again, but Daniel ducked low, grabbing a chunk of broken rebar from ground. As the blade whooshed over his head, Daniel thrust the metal upward, jabbing it between the alien's armor plates. Sparks flew. Carzo howled. He staggered back, clutching his side. The wound was not deep, not deadly, but it was a wound. The crowd gasped. A human had made the alien bleed. Daniel dropped the bent rebar, breathing hard. His hands shook from the impact. Still, he stood tall, smirk steady. "Guess you're not invincible after all." Silence hung for a heartbeat. Then the humans watching erupted in cheers. Shouts. Cries of victory. Carzo's eyes blazed with fury and hidden deep inside fear. He raised his blade high, pointing it at Daniel. "You are nothing. You will die screaming human." Daniel shrugged. "Maybe, but not today." Behind him, soldiers raised their weapons, courage flowing through them like fire. Civilians stood taller, their fear broken. The duel was no longer just one man against one alien. It had become something bigger, a symbol, the first spark of defiance. And sparks, once lit, could spread into wildfires. The street burned. Smoke rose from shattered buildings. Every strike from Carzo's blade tore deeper into the ruined city. Yet Daniel still stood. His chest rose and fell, sweat and blood covering his skin. But his eyes never lost that calm fire. The people around him no longer hid. Soldiers crouched behind Rex, waiting. Civilians whispered, their fear breaking into something sharper. Every second Daniel stayed standing. The crowd grew braver. Carzo saw it. He hated it. His victories had always been simple. Appear, show power, crush resistance. Fear spread, and the world bent. That was the way of conquest. But this human, this single, bleeding man, was ruining it. "You are only delaying the inevitable." Carzo roared, swinging again. The blade smashed into a collapsed wall, sending shards of stone flying. Daniel ducked behind rubble, breathing hard. His ribs ached from the earlier kick. His knuckles still throbbed from striking armor. He was running out of strength. But he had something left the alien didn't. Patience. He peeked from cover, smirking even through the pain. "You're sweating, big guy. Didn't expect this much trouble from one human, did you?" Carzo snarled, his four glowing eyes narrowing. "You are weak, fragile. Every second you stand is only mercy from me." Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, every second I stand is another second you lose control." The alien growled, rushing forward with another powerful swing. Daniel dove aside, the plasma slicing through the ground where he had stood. The heat seared his back, but he rolled his feet. The crowd was shouting now. They weren't begging for mercy. They were cheering. "Hit him again!" someone yelled. "You can do it!" cried another. Carzo's fury boiled. These humans dared cheer against him. He turned his blade, pointing it not at Daniel but at the watching crowd. "Silence, vermin! Watch your hero die, or I will slaughter you first." The crowd froze. Gasps filled the air. But Daniel's voice cut through. "Hey!" The alien turned back. Daniel was standing tall, his smirk sharper than ever. "You want me, not them. Or are you scared you can't finish the job?" Carzo roared, insulted. His pride could not allow hesitation. He lunged back at Daniel, swinging wildly, faster, angrier. His strikes tore craters in the street, but Daniel kept moving, forcing the alien to focus only on him. That was the mistake Daniel wanted. He knew he couldn't win with strength. But if the alien kept wasting his energy, strike after strike, rage would do the rest. Daniel ducked another blow, then shouted to the soldiers, "Do you see it? He's not a god. He bleeds. He misses. He makes mistakes." The soldiers rose higher behind their cover, courage filling their eyes. Their weapons were still useless against Dravic armor, but their spirits were no longer broken. Daniel pointed at the alien. "He's not here to rule. He's here to scare you. And fear only works if you give it power." The crowd erupted with cheers again. Louder this time. Stronger. Carzo's swings grew more reckless. His chest heaved with rage. Sparks flew as his plasma blade carved deep scars into the earth. But he no longer struck with precision. Daniel smiled through the pain. "Yeah, that's it. Keep getting mad. You're strong, but you're not smart." The alien howled, lunging again, but this time Daniel sidestepped and shoved a chunk of rubble under his boot. Carzo's massive foot slipped, and for the first time, the alien stumbled forward, crashing to one knee. The crowd gasped. Soldiers shouted in triumph. Daniel raised his voice. "See that? He can fall. He's not unstoppable. He's just another bully who thinks size means victory." The alien slammed his fist into ground, rising again. His armor burned brighter, his rage boiling over. But the humans no longer looked afraid. Their eyes blazed with fire, just like Daniel's. And Carzo knew it. For the first time in his long life, the warrior of the Dravic Empire realized something terrifying. The humans were no longer afraid. And once fear was gone, conquest was never certain. Carzo rose from the ground, his armor glowing like molten stone. His blade burned hotter, flames dancing along its edge. His voice thundered through the ruins. "You dare humiliate me? You dare make a spectacle of this battle?" Daniel stood across from him, chest heaving, blood dripping down his side. Every breath hurt, but his smirk remained. "I don't need to humiliate you. You're doing that yourself." The crowd erupted in cheers and laughter. Nervous, broken people, just hours ago hiding in terror, were now shouting, mocking the alien warrior. Their voices echoed through the ruins, growing stronger by the second. Carzo's four glowing eyes blazed with fury. He roared and charged forward, blades swinging down like a storm. Daniel dove aside, rolling across the rubble. Heat scorched his back, but he stood again, steady. "You missed again," Daniel called, his voice carrying through the smoke. "Maybe your aim's not so great after all." The alien's blade smashed into another building, splitting its frame in two. Dust rained down. The people gasped, but when the smoke cleared, Daniel was still standing, still smirking. The cheers grew louder. Daniel raised his voice so all could hear. "Look at him. All his power, all his weapons. And he can't break one human. If he can't crush me, how can he crush all of us?" The crowd roared in agreement. Soldiers lifted their rifles high, shouting. Civilians raised fists, voices shaking the air. The hopeless silence of the city was gone, replaced by a wildfire defiance. Carzo swung again and again, but his strikes grew sloppy, wild. His pride, once his greatest armor, now became his weakness. Daniel saw it clearly. He had no illusions. One wrong step, one late dodge, and he'd be dead. But the fight was no longer just about him. Every second he stood tall, every smirk he gave, every word he spoke, it was fuel for humanity's spirit. "Do you hear that?" Daniel shouted as another strike slammed into the earth. "That's the sound of your empire losing." The alien bellowed in rage, his voice shaking the sky. "I will silence them. I will silence you." Daniel grabbed another chunk of metal from the rubble, a bent steel pipe. He held it like a staff, knowing it was nearly useless. But when he raised it high, the crowd roared louder, as if it were a sword of legend. "You see this?" Daniel shouted. "Not alien tech, not fancy weapons. Just scrap. And even with scrap, we fight. Because humans don't quit." Carzo charged, swinging with deadly force. Daniel braced, then rolled at the last second. The alien's blade smashed into ground, and Daniel swung his steel pipe with every ounce of strength. Clang! The pipe cracked against the alien's helmet. It didn't break through, but the sound rang like a bell across the street. Carzo staggered a step, more from shock than pain. The crowd exploded in cheers. Soldiers fired into the sky. Civilians screamed with joy. The impossible had happened. A human had struck the conqueror again, right in the head. Daniel grinned through bloodied teeth. "Not so untouchable now, are you?" The alien roared, voice full of pure fury. His pride was shattered, his patience gone. His swings became reckless storms, his movements burning through energy. He was fighting with anger, not control. Daniel knew he couldn't keep this up forever. His body ached, his strength was fading. But that wasn't the point. The point was to show the world something bigger than himself. That humans could fight back. He raised his voice one last time, shouting so loud it echoed through the ruins. "Remember this, all of you. He is not invincible. He can bleed. He can fall. And if one of us can stand against him, all of us can." The roar of the crowd shook the ground. Fear had been replaced with fire. Carzo stood trembling with fury, his blade burning bright. But his glowing eyes betrayed something else now, uncertainty. For the first time in his long history of conquest, the alien warrior realized he was not facing just one man. He was facing humanity. Carzo's roar split the air like a storm. His blade blazed brighter than before, flames licking across its edges. He stomped forward, each step cracking the ground. The alien warrior was no longer calm, no longer in control. He was in a frenzy. Daniel stood ready, the steel pipe still in his hands. His body trembled. His arms felt like lead. Every breath burned his lungs. He had no strength left to waste, but he kept standing, tall and steady. The crowd around him was no longer silent. They shouted, screamed, and cheered. Their voices shook the ruins as if they were an army themselves. "Daniel! Daniel!" they cried. Carzo swung again, faster, wilder. Daniel ducked, the blade skimming so close it singed his hair. He rolled across the rubble, barely keeping balance. His heart pounded, but his smirk returned. "You're getting sloppy." The alien's eyes blazed. "Silence!" He brought his blade down in a crushing strike. Daniel raised the steel pipe to block, knowing it would shatter. Clang! The pipe snapped in half, the broken pieces flying across the ground. The plasma blade buried itself deep into the earth, carving a glowing scar in the street. Daniel staggered back, unarmed. His chest rose and fell in ragged breaths. His body screamed to give up, but he stayed upright, bloodied lips curling into another smirk. "You broke my stick," he said. "Guess I'll have to use my fist again." The crowd burst into laughter and cheers. Their fear was gone. Their fire burned brighter than ever. Carzo's fury grew. His strikes came harder, but each one missed. Daniel was slower now, but the alien was reckless, letting rage guide him. He no longer fought like a warrior. He fought like a beast. Daniel saw it. Even through pain and exhaustion, he noticed every wasted strike, every stumble, every second the alien's pride dragged him deeper into mistakes. He shouted to the crowd, his voice raw. "Look at him. He's stronger, faster, armed with weapons we don't have, and he still can't win." The humans roared. Soldiers slammed their rifles against rubble. Civilians shouted until their throats cracked. The sound carried through the broken streets, spreading like wildfire. Carzo's glowing eyes darted to the people. Their voices pierced his armor deeper than any weapon. He had conquered worlds with fear. But this world was rising with defiance. The alien swung wide, and Daniel ducked again, grabbing a piece of chain from the rubble. He whipped it across Carzo's wrist, sparks flying as it clashed against armor. It wasn't much, but it made the alien stumble. Daniel grinned through bloody teeth. See? Not so perfect. Not so untouchable. The alien bellowed, slamming his blade into the ground again. You are nothing. I will grind you to dust. Daniel staggered back, his body nearly breaking, but his eyes stayed sharp. Then do it, if you can. That line sent the crowd into another frenzy. Their chants grew louder, their courage spreading through every street. And then something new happened. From the edge of the ruins, more soldiers appeared. Not hiding, not broken. They carried rifles, grenades, even makeshift weapons. Their faces were grim, but steady. They joined the crowd, raising their voices with the rest. The resistance had awakened. Carzo's had turned, his four glowing eyes widening. This was no longer a duel. This was no longer fear, keeping a people silent. This was rebellion. Daniel's chest heaved, his body ready to collapse. But he stood tall, shoulders straight, smirk unshaken. Looks like you've got a bigger problem than me now. The alien warrior trembled with fury. His pride demanded victory, but his heart whispered the truth. This battle was slipping away. The human was not just fighting, he was changing the battlefield. And once a fire like this spread, no empire could put it out. The city burned around them. Smoke rose in black clouds. Fire glowed from shattered windows. But the people no longer cowered. They stood, shouting, cheering, their voices stronger than the ruins. Carzo towered in the center, his armor glowing, his blade sparking with fury. He looked less like a conqueror now, and more like a cornered beast. His chest heaved, his rage burning out of control. Across from him, Daniel Hayes stood tall. His body shook with exhaustion. His arms were cut, his ribs cracked, his legs heavy as stone. Yet his eyes burned with the same calm fire, and his smirk had never left. The two faced each other in silence. The crowd held its breath. This was no longer just a duel. This was the battle that would decide if Earth broke or if it rose. Carzo raised his blade high, voice booming like thunder. Enough! This ends now. I will crush you, human, and your people will kneel. Daniel wiped blood from his mouth and grinned. You've been saying that all day. Still waiting. The crowd roared in laughter and cheers. Soldiers slammed their rifles against the ground. Civilians shouted until their voices cracked. The alien warrior's fury exploded. With a deafening roar, he charged, swinging his plasma blade with the strength of a mountain. The ground split as he closed in, fire raining around him. Daniel's eyes narrowed. His body screamed to move, to dodge, but he had nothing left. This was the end, unless he made it something more. At the last second, Daniel lunged forward instead of back. He dove inside the alien swing, the blade slicing past his shoulder, burning his jacket. Pain ripped through him, but he ignored it. With every ounce of strength left in his body, Daniel slammed his fist into the alien's wounded side, the gap where he had driven the rebar earlier. Crack! The alien howled in pain, staggering back. His blade wavered. Sparks burst from his armor, where Daniel struck. The crowd erupted in screams of triumph. He's hurt! He's hurt! Daniel collapsed to one knee, chest heaving, vision blurring. But he lifted his head, his smirk still there. Told you you could bleed. Carzo roared, clutching his side. Fury burned in his glowing eyes. He raised his blade one final time, pouring all his strength, all his rage into the strike. The people gasped. Soldiers aimed their rifles. Civilians shouted warnings. But Daniel did not move. He rose slowly to his feet, swaying, blood dripping, and faced the alien head-on. He stood tall, unbroken, unbowed. As the alien swung, Daniel's voice cut through the chaos, loud and unshaken. You can kill me, but you'll never break us. The blade came down. Boom! Gunfire and rockets erupted from every direction. Soldiers unleashed everything they had. Grenades exploded against Karzul's legs. Makeshift firebombs from civilians burst across his armor. The alien staggered, his final strike thrown off course. The plasma blade smashed into ground beside Daniel, carving a crater but missing its target. Daniel raised his fist weakly, shouting with the last of his voice. Now, all of you, together. The resistance answered. The ruined street filled with fire and thunder as humans struck from every side. Bullets sparked, explosions cracked, and voices roared. Karzul swung wildly, but his frenzy was no longer enough. His pride, his power, his fear, all crumbled under the weight of humanity's defiance. Finally, a rocket slammed into his chest. His armor shattered. The alien warrior fell backward, crashing into the ruins with a thunder that shook the earth. Silence followed. Smoke curled from the crater. The conqueror of worlds lay still. Daniel swayed, barely able to stand, his vision blurred, his body ready to collapse. But he forced himself to stay tall. The crowd stared in shock. Then, one by one, voices rose. Cheers turned into roars. Soldiers lifted their weapons high. Civilians cried out, their fists in the air. They had won, not because of weapons, not because of strength, but because one man stood tall when no one else would. Daniel Hayes smirked through bloodied lips and whispered, almost too quiet to hear, "Told you, humans don't break easy." Then his knees gave out, and he fell to ground, unconscious. The people rushed forward, not in despair, but in triumph. They lifted him high, carrying him through the ruins, chanting his name. Daniel's stand had done more than defeat an alien warrior. It had lit a fire that would spread across the world. Humanity was no longer conquered. Humanity was rising, and the Dravic Empire would learn a lesson they had never faced before. Humans never bow.